The book of Revelation says, "The spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ." This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy Reality News app. Get it now.
Okay, welcome back to the Investigative Journal on this March 1st, 2016 day on our calendar. I'm your host, Greg Anthony, and you're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com. You can listen to my show every evening from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. That's on FirstAmendmentRadio.com, or you can listen at 11 a.m. That's Pacific time. And if you can't catch either of those shows, you can go to my website at arcticbeacon.com, and you can get shows going all the way back 10 years. So I am going to go back 10 years today. And the reason I'm doing that is because yesterday I went back to an interview I did with Jim Rothstein, a New York police detective. And the reason I went back and did my old interview with him is because really nothing's changed. It's only gotten worse. And I'm talking about the pedophile rings, the child trafficking, and the connection to the Vatican as well as our high-level government officials. Now, most people won't believe that. But please bear in mind what Jim had to say yesterday. And so one of the stories that he was still investigating after he was threatened with his life and forced out of the New York Police Department for having a connection between Cardinal Spellman and the pedophile ring. And Spellman is well protected. Jim said the most powerful man in America. Well, anyway, one story, after he left, he got involved with a case called Johnny Gosch. And Johnny was a newspaper boy in the Midwest and was kidnapped. And the story is just horrendous. And it shows, this is an example of what happens to thousands of children. And so I'm going to go back and play it again because I talked to both of these people, Noreen and Jim, recently, and nothing really has changed. So instead of asking the same questions over and over again, I thought I'd just play this again when this story was fresh in the minds of everybody. But again, nothing has changed. And in fact, it's gotten worse. So let's go back to 2006 and listen to Noreen Gosch tell about how her son was, I believe, 10, 11, or 12 years old at the time, and he went out just to do his paper route and never came home. Here's my interview I did on Genesis Communication Network in 2006.
This story will show you why, not only in this type of media, but also in the mainstream media. This story needs to be discussed in a fair manner, needs to be openly discussed, and we need to find out what happened to Johnny Gosch. And we'll get into this story in just one moment. Let me just outline it by saying if there is a pedophile ring and human trafficking ring in this country that's taking our children, and it goes high up into places that people with power don't want us to find out about, that's just too bad. Because this story is going to emphasize what has been going on for the last, how long is it now, since Johnny was kidnapped mysteriously from his mother, who loved him very much, from Des Moines, Iowa. It happened on September 5th, 1982, and my guest, Noreen Gosch, has been trying to find her son for all those years, every moment, every minute, every hour of every day. She hasn't forgotten what happened, and she will never forget, but it's caused her a lot of problems. I'm going to show you on this show that the media has not given her a fair shake, is basically used as damage control. I'm going to also show you that the senators and congressmen and everyone else in her state, including law enforcement all over in this country, are protecting someone and somebody in high places. In the meantime, her son has been taken from her, and if you think it can't happen to you, think again, because I'm going to let you listen to my guest who's going to tell you the whole story. Noreen, how are you today? Are you there? Noreen? I think we lost Noreen.
I can hear you.
Oh, there. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, I can hear you too. I just gave you the introduction. Please, and you heard that. Please tell us the story, how you first lost your son and what's happened since. Go ahead.
Yes. On September 5th, 1982, my son started out to do his paper route. He carried the Des Moines Register Sunday paper and the daily paper. And that morning, there was a man who pulled up with a car to ask directions.
Okay.
Johnny did not talk to the man. He had been told not to, talk to strangers. So he continued on towards the corner to meet up with the other paper boys and fold his papers and then start off on his route. He was pulling his little wagon and had our little family dog with him.
Okay.
And,
how old was Johnny at the time?
He was 12.
Okay. Go ahead.
And he got to the corner. The other kids were there. There was a 44-year-old attorney there picking up his son's papers, and that attorney is now a judge in Des Moines. And this man pulled up and started asking where 86th Street was. He kept wanting directions. And the attorney left. One of the other boys left. And that left my son and one other witness on the corner. My son turned to the other boy and said, "There's something strange about that guy. I'm scared. I'm going home." And Johnny started walking away from that corner. The man in the car started up his engine again, but before he pulled away, he flicked the dome light on and off 3 times. And the other witness was able to supply us with that information, a good description of the man, his car, and a partial license plate number. Johnny walked down the street, and as he walked away, the other boy noticed that another man came out from between 2 houses and started following my son. And the second man was very tall, probably they estimated to be about 6'5". He followed Johnny around the corner, which then put him out of sight to the witness.
Okay.
Within seconds, the witness heard the slamming of a car door, and he saw the same car run the stop sign and turn left, which would be heading north towards the interstate in our city.
Okay, so that day when he left, that's the last time you've seen your son.
Yes.
And how do you describe your relationship with him prior to that?
Well, Johnny was a great kid. He was just so kind to everyone, and just a fun boy. And he wanted to keep his paper route to earn the money to buy a dirt bike. And he had just gotten his dirt bike a couple of weeks before he was kidnapped. He had saved his money all summer, and we let him get it, and there was a big field out behind our house where he could drive it because he couldn't take it on the street.
Okay, now this is a long, involved story. We're talking over 26 years. You've never stopped trying to find him, and this has led into what I call a story that the media recently covered it, the mainstream media, but I think what they did, and I checked this out, they did a lot of damage control. They didn't give you a fair shake. They tried to discredit you, and I think what we're going to do, and if I'm wrong, if you'd like to do it differently, tell me, but we could fast forward this to the recent information that you received,
Yes.
Which is just unbelievable evidence, and maybe just paraphrase or outline all these years. We'll get back to that. But I want to try to show to people what is really happening with the media, how they've covered this story, Geraldo Rivera included, the rest of them, how they really try to distort this. It just tells me they're in cahoots, or they're using this as damage control to protect somebody. And so basically, tell us about the recent photographs, your website, and your efforts recently in the last 3 months.
Okay.
And then we'll get back to the whole story. I think, and we have like 2 minutes before this break, and then if I interrupt you, we'll come back. Go ahead.
Okay. One of the most unbelievable things took place on August 27th. I received photographs They were in an envelope, and they were left outside my door. August 27th happened to be my birthday. And when I opened up the envelope, and it was a large envelope, when I opened up the envelope, there were photographs inside of Johnny and several other boys, bound and gagged, laying on a bed. He had on jeans, and he was gagged, bound. The other three boys, in a separate photograph, they were all bound and gagged. No explanation, just the photograph. And we know for certain that the photograph of Johnny is genuine. It is him. And to have this information surface 24 years after he was kidnapped was almost unbelievable to take place. The FBI has said that they've never seen anything like this happen in a kidnapping case. The National Center for Missing Children, they told me that immediately when they saw the pictures, they knew for certain that it was Johnny. They ran it through their investigative team that does a lot of photo analysis, and they were convinced it was Johnny also.
And let me just give listeners this out. If you want to go to www.johnnygosch, that's GOSCH.com, you can see these photos, the photos that came to Mrs. Gosch 24 years after the kidnapping. We'll be back. We're going to get back into this story about how the media covered it and what Mrs. Gosch has gone through to get to the truth. Just incredible. Back in 4 minutes on the Investigative Journal. We're back, and my guest is Noreen Gosch. And Noreen, I guess what we could do here, I noticed on your website most of the interviews were before this evidence came forward in August, and the ones since have been mainstream publications or outlets that haven't given you a fair shake. The other ones, some alternative sources before that did. I don't want to single those guys out, so there are some people that have been trying to get this story out, but not much has been done after this hard evidence has come out.
In fact, they've almost wanted to discredit it totally, even though I've got some of the people who have authenticated the photo as being real, and they believe that definitely this was part of a human trafficking ring. Human trafficking has now reached $20 billion worth of business every year.
Unbelievable.
Where they are buying and selling and using the services of children as prostitutes and also for human compromise.
Why have people like Geraldo and all these, the Greta Show on the Fox station, all these other mainstream outlets recently been trying to basically, in a sense, let's just say it the way it is, discredit you? And I know it hurts you badly. Go ahead, tell us.
The reason that I believe they do this is because I think deep down, anybody in all these shows have top investigators that work for them. They know that this is connected to someone that is powerful who happens to be pedophiles. Mm-hmm. People that are, their proclivity is to have sex with children. And that is no respecter of profession or title. We find pedophiles that are dirt poor. We find pedophiles who are very rich. The only difference between the two, the poor pedophile has to go out and secure his own victim. The rich one can afford to have a child brought to them, and they do.
Yeah, now, throughout these 26 years, before this evidence, we're going to break this into two parts, the before the evidence and after. Before this evidence, tell the people what extremes you've gone to. And I know the powers that be are very upset because you have not given up. And tell us how they've tried to make you give up, basically. Go ahead.
There's been many attempts to try and get me to quit. I've received various kinds of threats. I've received absolutely no help from the law enforcement here in Des Moines. Someone said to me recently, well, didn't the FBI jump all over this when you got the photographs? Weren't they right on top of it investigating? When was the last time you talked to the FBI? And the last time I've had any conversation with the FBI was over 15 years ago. They haven't called me at all since these photographs have come forward and been brought out. Nothing.
Nothing. Now, during the 26 years,
this is the biggest single break on any kidnapping case that they've ever had.
Yeah, they're treating
they
it as...
normally just don't find, they just normally don't get pictures of kids.
Yeah.
And these were found on a, these were later found on a website called jacobstales.com. And the website remained, even though there were people that said, oh, no, it's not Johnny Gosch. And there was a detective from Florida that kept shooting off his mouth. Well, he's lying. It is Johnny Gosch. And Johnny Gosch's picture was on a pedophile website. And then they took the Jacob's Tales website down. And now I understand it is up and running again. Someone wrote to me last night and told me that it is still operative.
Did you ever find out who sent, I know it's difficult, but any leads on who sent these photos?
We are working on it. I work with a detective who was a former New York police detective, and what his expertise was at that time, he was on the original task force that investigated human trafficking years ago. And during that part of it, he investigated Johnny's case. Because Johnny's case has all the components that the human trafficking cases has.
Now, you said also there were others in Des Moines during the same time?
Yes, we had another boy kidnapped 2 years after Johnny. Then a third boy kidnapped 2 years after that boy. So we had Johnny in 82, Eugene Martin in 84, Mark Allen in 86, and then I just recently discovered in another part of Iowa, there's another boy. He was 17 when he was kidnapped. Although his picture, his face looks like he's about 12. He has a very young face. He was taken right around 1985, and then Jacob Wetterling was taken in 1989. There were 3 boys taken and all 3 murdered in Omaha, Nebraska, which is just 2 hours from Des Moines. So we had quite a rash of crimes involving young boys in that period of time. We've also since done a study of missing children all across the country, boys between the ages of 12 and 13 that would have been kidnapped and taken during those years. And every state has bunches of boys that were kidnapped, never found. Some, they were listed as stranger abductions. Some, the police chiefs managed to get them listed as runaways. But in talking to the parents, the evidence does not support runaway in any of those cases. But it's all across the country. We had that many boys taken during the years in the 80s, 1980s.
What separates you from the other families in Des Moines that have lost their children? What is the difference between what you've done over the years and what they have done?
I wouldn't take no for an answer, and I never ask permission, and I never defend anything I do in my decisions concerning my son's case. The police shut down on this case. The FBI didn't do their job. They in fact, the FBI came to my home 3 days after Johnny was kidnapped, and they said, we're not going to enter the case because the police chief told us he does not want our help, and basically we have no crime.
And you went to the police chief, and what did he say?
And I said, then get out. If you're not going to work with me, then step aside because I'm coming through. And I will run my own investigation.
And what did the police chief say?
The police chief immediately began screaming at me. He liked to scream at people. I guess it made him feel important. He began screaming at me that I wasn't allowed to run my own investigation. I wasn't allowed to hire a private investigator, blah, blah, blah. And I looked at him and I said, there is no need for you to shout. I have perfect hearing. And I will hire a private investigator, and I will have my own investigation. This is still America.
Yeah, I guess nothing could be worse than to lose your son like that. During those 26 years, how did you keep yourself together?
I just kept plodding along day by day. I have a tremendous amount of faith and strength, and there was an outpouring of kindness from many people throughout the world. that have learned of this case. I get emails from many people in other countries that have read my website.
Okay, listen, we're going to take a 4-minute break, come back, and we have a half hour to get into the details, and I'm going to leave it up to you to tell us your story. Back in 4 minutes on the Investigative Journal.
Okay, we are back in 2016 now, and I'm going to finish up this first half hour on the Investigative Journal on FirstAmendmentRadio.com, just making some comments about many discussions I had with Noreen over the years. And just fill in the gaps here. Now, along with Jim Rothstein, I did shows with both of them together. And Jim entered the investigation trying to help get Johnny Gosch back and find out exactly what happened to him. But the whole thing boiled down, if you remember what Noreen said, they had witnesses that categorically, without a doubt, had enough evidence to say that Johnny was kidnapped. They had a car, they had the two men stalking him, the lights going on 3 times as a signal, Johnny disappearing off into this car and off towards the interstate. Now, when this was reported, the police chief, who was yelling at Noreen years later, basically stood down. He said he couldn't do anything and he thought it was just a runaway. Now, the reason he stood down is because, according to Jim Rothstein, if these kidnappers could get away for 24 to 48 hours without any apprehension, the chances of ever finding Johnny Gosch were next to nothing. So it's vital that if they want to kidnap these kids and there's a ring going on and the police chief knows about it, he has to not allow anyone to look for Johnny in those first 48 hours, which means that they'll be successful in their child abduction. So with the evidence that police chief had, there's no doubt in my mind he was in on it, because any normal, sane, rational person hearing that, having an eyewitness of the car, having an eyewitness of the man coming out of the house, seeing all of this, that is plenty to get the wheels moving and trying to block off the interstates, moving quickly to get this boy back, but they did nothing. And as Jim said, and he's researched hundreds, thousands of these cases, if you don't do something in those first 48 hours, it is very, very difficult to ever find the child that was abducted. And from there, you're going to listen to Noreen tell about the things she learned about what happened to her son and her efforts to find him despite the police, the FBI, and everybody else doing absolutely nothing, protecting the guilty parties. Try to go and find, just Google Noreen Gosch, Gosch, probably find the Johnny Gosch website. Also, Jim Rothstein, that's Rothstein, New York police detective, and you'll find a whole bunch of stories that I did, a whole bunch of radio interviews. And like I said, the reason I'm playing this is to show you that we did this 10 years ago to try to get this story out. Jim Rothstein was trying to get even congressmen and senators and people involved in this to do something. But over the 10 years, these pedophile rings have gotten worse. And doesn't that tell you something? And all it would take would be a solid investigation on 1 or 2 cases to get to the major ones, because Jim was working on the biggest ones in the country, and he said the problem is the investigations never get to the top. They're always halted, and a low-level guy gets put away. And that means that there is an effort by district attorneys, by FBI insiders, to keep the pedophile rings flowing, not stopping them. Incredible story. And this story is the perfect example of what I'm saying. So listen hard. And next time you go and buy a carton of milk, wonder where that kid is that's on that carton. We'll be back in 3 minutes on the Investigative Journal.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Despite Nicolas Cage's promise to do his best to get left behind rapture answers for us, don't hold your breath. Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy in order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. If you want true Bible prophecy answers, get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. The author exposes the Latin rapture origin, the 7-year tribulation deception, true Bible revelation of Daniel's 70 weeks, the abomination of desolation, the restrainer, America in the Revelation, the image of the beast and the mark of the beast, and the truth about God's chosen people, and so much more about Bible prophecy. This book will shatter the Left Behind paradigm of future events. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. Visit crosstheborder.org, C-R-O-S-S, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.
Okay, welcome back to the second half hour of the Investigative Journal on this March 1st, 2016 day on our calendar. We're going back and looking at the Johnny Gosch kidnapping as he was taken into one of the high-level pedophile rings in our country. And his mother, Johnny Gosch, is talking about her efforts to get him back. Let's go back to 2006 to the Noreen Gosch interview I did on the Genesis Communication Network.
In a case like Johnny Gosch, kidnapped in 1982, the age of 12, if you were his mother or father, I guess the least you could expect was cooperation from your authorities, the FBI, anyone involved, including your state representatives, your federal elected officials. And Noreen Gosch has got nothing more, basically. Is that a fair statement?
That's pretty true. There was our governor at the time Johnny was kidnapped, Terry Branstad, was very helpful And we passed a lot of legislation in the state of Iowa concerning children. Then when he went out of office and another man took over, which is Tom Vilsack, he immediately told me, when I made an appointment to talk with him, that the missing boys in Iowa were none of his concern, and that I should take my problem to the Department of Public Safety. And he just announced this week that he's running for president.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, Lord, help us.
All right. I'm going to leave it up to you. We have maybe a 9-minute segment here and another 10 minutes on the other side of the break because it's such a huge story. I know you can only stay with us now, otherwise I would have you longer. So you can come back again for a part 2 interview. But I guess I'm going to leave it up to your better judgment to tell us the most important parts. Throughout your long search for your son, throughout this major evidence that just came forward in August, and what's happening to date. So go ahead and just tell us.
Okay. Throughout the years, there's been a lot of things that have come that have been important pieces of information. And people have come to us with things that they were trying to be helpful with. And we didn't always have a place to put the pieces on that big jigsaw puzzle. Mm-hmm. And then when the photographs came and they were made public, then there's just been an outpouring of information from the most unusual places and sources, and it has allowed us to put more of the pieces in place. There is information out there. There are people that know what happened, and we're finding that many people are willing to share information now. I think maybe it's been because we've had so many years that have passed that some of the original players might be dead or retired or whatever, and maybe people feel more comfortable. I also think that a lot of the victims during that time, who are now young men, I think they want justice. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if the origin of the photographs might not be from within that network.
Yeah,
maybe some of the kids got their hands on the photos and decided to send them out to try and make them public through me because they've watched me stand up all these years.
And you would think after these photos surface that you would get the utmost cooperation from the National Center for Missing Children to begin with. Well, let's start with their story and why they're and how they are not cooperating with you.
They're pretty slow to move. I sent them the photographs as soon as I received them, as well as giving them to the police. Never heard from the police again. And then on October 21st, the National Center called me, and they told me that they knew that the photographs were Johnny. And I said, well, if you knew they were Johnny, why, for the love of God, did you let me stand out there by myself when that detective from Florida spoke out and tried to destroy all credibility for me? And
that
they
just
said,
recently happened, yes.
And the answer was, well, I guess we could have done a press release, but we didn't. And I said, well, I want a press release from you people. You know it's Johnny. Why wouldn't you do it to help? And then he said, well, this is one of the biggest developments in a kidnapping case that the FBI has ever seen. They don't quite know what to do, and they're not prepared to speak on Johnny's case. And I said, well, good heavens, they've had 24 years to prepare. And they can't think of anything to say. And then they told me that they, of course, wanted all information that I would get concerning these photographs and the source of the origin of them. And I told them that I would be happy to cooperate as soon as I get the press release. But until such time, then I'm not going to share everything I know, because I've seen what they've done with information I've given before.
What is that?
I give it to the police or the FBI. They take it. Nothing is ever done about it, and then they bring out somebody to discredit it.
Yes,
so
I'm
not going to do that this time. So far, there's been 4 photographs of Johnny that have surfaced. 3 of them are on my website, which is www.johnnygosch.com. And then there's one more photograph I just got on Thanksgiving, that I sent to you, Greg, but if not, I don't think it's on the website yet today.
Yeah, I saw that. I just looked in my email and saw that. That's not
I
on your
sent it
website.
to my webmaster, and he's going to put it on, but I just don't think he got to it yet today.
Okay. So what this leads me to believe, is that if you have a private, you've done this privately, but if the government or the FBI is covering this up, they must be covering it up for somebody that can control it. And that's the real key here. If they were doing this fairly, I mean, let's not even point fingers, but the cover-up shows that we're talking about higher-up people, whether with money or in government or whatever, and I think you deserve to know what happened to your son. And
well, that's what I want to know. I have an awful lot of the information I need. When it comes to any arrest being made, of course, I cannot do that, but I'm not sure they would anyway. What I want is the remaining pieces of truth that I do not have. I know Johnny was taken and put into this network of human trafficking. I know he was bought and sold many times. I know some of the locations where he was held and kept. They used to call them safe houses. Ha ha, they're not safe. There's just an awful lot of contradictions in the way that they run this business using these children. But they use mind control through a form of technique called MK Ultra. That's widely known now that they did that with children. And they use some military bases for these, what they used to call classes. And kids would be put through this training on actual military bases in our country. And there has to be people who are very powerful in order to orchestrate that. And I will have to give them this. They are very organized. They've been doing this with kids under our noses for decades. And up until Johnny was kidnapped, I don't believe that there were ever parents that fought back. After Johnny was kidnapped, I used to send a letter and a missing persons poster of Johnny to President Reagan every single day he was in office. Every day he was taken. Things like that to keep Johnny's story before the public is what I did.
And was there any response from Ronald Reagan?
Yes, oh yes. He sent a nice letter saying that he believed that the FBI and the West Des Moines police were doing everything possible to help. When Johnny was kidnapped and the search parties were out looking for him in the wooded areas and the things that they do when there's a child missing, those searches were all organized by the family, us. The police did not do it. And the police chief arrived at one of the search sites and got on a bullhorn and yelled to the crowd, "Everybody go home, this kid's nothing but a runaway."
All right, we're going to come back for our final segment with Noreen Gosch in 4 minutes on the Investigative Journal. Back in the Investigative Journal, my last segment with Noreen Gosch. You can only stay an hour with us, and I want to thank you for that time. But we will have you back at your convenience. So, Noreen, no cooperation. It would seem to me, it's obvious to me that the FBI is covering up for somebody. They usually don't cover up for average people. So the question becomes, who did it? And how do we get to the truth when our own agencies, our own elected officials won't help and actually are a hindrance? What's your thoughts?
Well, in my own case and those that I'm trying to assist, I think it's more important than ever that parents band together, because all those who have missing children that have not received answers, that have not received any kind of satisfaction, if they were to contact one another and stand strong together, it would be more of a force to be reckoned with. It's very difficult when you're out there by yourself. It's a big operation when they do a cover-up, especially something like this.
And imagine the
I mean, if this many politicians or media personnel disappeared, it'd be headlines every day. But a whole bunch of children, who cares? They don't.
Yeah, who did it is the question how to ask. I mean,
but think about it. If that many children disappeared,
right,
that's one thing. But if that many politicians disappeared, wouldn't everybody wonder? There would be headlines, there'd be stories.
Yeah, and the point here is, though, these politicians, and your story illustrates it, and the media, have been used to make it difficult for you. I mean, the threats, first of all, these guys should be at your service, especially with this evidence that's coming forward. It's just unfathomable to me that a group as powerful as the FBI, with this information, can't get to the bottom of it, even knowing where the website comes from. And it's basically a cover-up. Then you get to the media trying to get help, and what they do to you is basically very simple. They bring you on, and they bring on a Florida detective to discredit you. Oh, that's not Johnny. This woman is just basically pulling at straws and making America feel, in a sense, well, yeah, she's a mother looking for a son, but the government's done everything they can. And that's what they're used for. And it's just not the story here.
And if
it's the other way around.
If they did it to my son and to me, they can do it to anybody.
And they have done it to thousands of other people.
Now, recently I did do a show for Der Spiegel television from Germany.
Yeah.
They came to the United States to do Johnny's story, and it was quite extended. They involved all the investigators that I've been working with privately over the years, and that aired in Germany. And they did ask me if I was disappointed in the way America has been handling the kidnap cases, especially my own sons. And I was very honest with them about what they didn't do and what they should have done and what the job description is. And that aired, and I received just an outpouring of emails from other countries. I get many of them from people in our country, too, because they watch my website weekly to see what updates there are. And if there's an update about other people's children that are unidentified, that the pictures show up, I put those kids on my website, too. And hopefully we can identify more of them. We found a couple of them that are listed on the National Center for Missing Children's website. So they were kidnapped children.
I saw those names, and I have Patricia Holm on right after you to talk a little bit about her case. The real story here is that I'm also sure that the FBI monitors your website, too, and monitors these programs, and not for the same reason of finding your son, but for damage control.
Exactly.
To find out what you're doing and to protect the people above them. They may not know exactly who they are, but they're given orders, and my plea to them right now is this. If you can't represent the American people and in good conscience continue to take a paycheck representing people above you who may be pedophiles that are stealing our children, then you better look deep inside your soul, Mr. FBI agent. And I plead to them to come forward and to say how they've been told not to investigate your case, to out the people above them, because I'll tell you what, that is the problem. It's following this authority that is misguided. These people above them are definitely telling them to stop this investigation because it may lead to people higher up in our government or higher up in business that want protection, while our children are being stolen. And it's just amazing to me what you've had to go through. What's your feeling about America?
What if this had jeopardized national security? Think about that.
What's that?
What if this has jeopardized international security?
Yeah.
At some point.
What is your feeling about this country after you've gone through this?
Well, we still have the country with the most freedoms to live in, and they're slowly going away, of course, but we still have that. So in that regard, it makes it still probably the best place to live. However, some of our leaders, I think, are working hidden agendas. Let's put it that way. And agendas to pad or profit for themselves in some way, or to feed their fetish or their behavior. And that's wrong. If you're going to run for office, if you're going to lead a country, if you're even going to lead a corporation, you need to be above reproach.
Good point. Any pattern between the children that you found over the years that have been taken?
We seem to have cycles where there are girls, lots of girls taken, that span certain ages. A lot of them can be traced, though, right back to an individual pedophile. And they catch the guy and they arrest him. A lot of those cases, the children end up murdered. With the boys, they just seem to vanish. Some information comes along years later. Nothing as big as these pictures that have come out on Johnny, though. I never expected to receive these photos. That was a surprise to me.
Yeah, and I wonder who the guy was that sent them. That is the big question.
Well, and maybe that will be revealed. I hope so. There's more pictures that come, and they seem to come on strategic days, like my birthday, Johnny's birthday, Thanksgiving. So maybe whoever's sending them somehow was able to gain access to the supply of pictures and is releasing them in this manner. I don't know. And maybe the reason that they've been sent to me is because they knew I would do something with it.
Yeah, you had about last 5 minutes here, you told me off the air that they targeted Johnny prior to his kidnapping, and then you found a catalog of other children. And tell us about that information that you uncovered in your investigation.
In August of 1984, I was invited to testify before the organized crime hearings and the relationship to kidnapped children in Washington. Some of the other guests that day were the FBI from the Washington area. They brought with them a lot of materials that they had seized from pedophiles when they arrested them. One of the things that they brought and had on the table for everyone to see was a catalog. And this catalog was filled with pictures of kids who had not yet been kidnapped. It was one that you would go through, you'd pick out the kid, you would give that information to whoever was supplying you with the catalog, and then that child would be kidnapped and brought to them. And I could hardly believe my ears when I heard that. It was like, so I went over to the man that was standing near the table, which was Ken Lanning from the FBI, and I said to him, "Tell me about this catalog. What is this?" He said, "Well, these are kids that have not been kidnapped yet. They've been photographed ahead of time, maybe walking home from school in their neighborhood or wherever, and then later, if they're picked out and chosen, then they are kidnapped."
And that's exactly what happened to your son, you found out, right?
Yes, it was. He was photographed prior to the kidnapping. There was a neighbor that witnessed it.
I would love to spend another hour with you, but I know you have to go, so let's do this. We're going to break here, and then we'll schedule another interview. Is that okay?
I would love that, and thank you so very much for having me on.
Okay, we're back in 2016 on the Investigative Journal, so I thought what I would do in the last 5 or 6 minutes here is turn over to JohnnyGosch.com and see what's happened. In April of 2015, a documentary film about Noreen Gosch and her 30-year fight for justice for her son Johnny had its theatrical premiere in Des Moines. It's a documentary done by 3 really good filmmakers. And let's move on. So the question really is, who took Johnny? The documentary, this was about Noreen and her 30-year fight for justice. It utilized strong local reporting from the time as well as current interviews. Filmmakers weave together past events into a coherent narrative and try to explain the case that was never solved. Noreen Gosch's passionate advocacy for her son led to the passage of laws regarding missing children and profoundly affected the culture of the entire country. It's been on the international festival circuit for, over a year. It's been 2 years now. And so go to that website and check up on it. And this is an examination into the infamous 30-year case. And it's a cold case of the Iowa paperboy, Johnny Gosch, who was taken. He was the first missing child to appear on a milk carton. And the film focuses on Johnny's mother, Noreen Gosch, and her relentless quest to find the truth about what happened to her son. Along the way, there have been mysterious sightings, bizarre revelations, and confrontation with the man who claims to have helped abduct Johnny. Now, we talked about that years ago when Jim Rothstein was on my show, and you got to go back to some of those old shows, because Jim was going to meet with these people. And so I got really involved with these two people to do this, and I'm glad to see that somebody came across with a documentary film. This film does capture the endless intrigue surrounding the most spellbinding missing persons case in U.S. history. If you ever gotten separated from your child for just a few moments, and remember the profound panic that sets in, you can begin to understand what Noreen Gosch has felt over the last 30 years, since her son Johnny disappeared delivering newspaper in West Des Moines, Iowa, on the morning of September 5th, 1982. And I'm sure this film will go into everything that I covered with Noreen and Jim over a period of several years. And what had happened when Jim actually found where Johnny was, when Johnny was sent by his handlers as a man to visit his mother, but he had to leave right away. I mean, it's an incredible story. And people ask, well, if he got out, why did he go back? At that point, he was so brainwashed. At that point, he was threatened probably with his life and his mother's life if he didn't return. It's an incredible story. And you have to go and go to her website at johnnygosch.com, and you can get all the details. And go back to my stories. And these go back over the years. I had Jim. Jim was very integral. Jim Rothstein, who I had on yesterday, was integral in helping Noreen try to get to the bottom of this. And he took this case on, and boy, some of his insights into what happened are incredible. And I'm sure that's covered in this film. So I'm glad we had a chance to revisit this. The question still becomes, when are we ever going to get to the truth about this? Is it a possibility? Well, we have presidential debates going on. Why doesn't some journalist ask a question about this type of terrorism, which Jim Rothstein says is the biggest terrorism we have to face in our country? And apparently the media has been told to stay away from these questions. And I'm sure if somebody really got to these questions, he'd be ushered out of the debate hall. Because really, folks, is there freedom of speech if we can't ask the hard questions? No. And that's what I trumpet all the time. We have to really look farther than what the press and what our government officials are giving us today. And if you've ever seen the presidential debates, it is like Mo Curley and Larry on the Republican side. Amazing what's going on. But anyway, we'll be back tomorrow. Yes, again, on the Investigative Journal here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.